I'm Nikhil Wiles, and today I'm reporting for the Carpetbagger Scalawags. On our iNews report today, I'll be taking you through a journey about the Civil War. Today I'll be talking to you about some of the most important military leaders in the Civil War's history. Some of them include Abraham Lincoln. He was elected president just about a year before the Civil War started. He then led the Union into battle as the 16th President of the United States. He responded to the war with power unprecedented by U.S. presidents before. He called for 75,000 volunteers into military service without a declaration of war. He distributed $2 million from the Treasury for the war materials, and he suspended the writ of habeas corpus, arresting and imprisoning suspected Confederate sympathizers without a warrant. Another important military leader of the Civil War was General Robert E. Lee. Just before the Civil War, Robert E. Lee was actually offered the command of federal forces in April 1861 by Abraham Lincoln. He, however, declined the offer, saying he couldn't fight against his own people. During the Civil War, General Robert E. Lee led the Confederate forces. General Ulysses S. Grant was also an important figure. He commanded troops in 1861 after participating in the bombardment of Fort Sumter, in the capture of Fort Henry, in the victory at Fort Donelson, but then he was surprised at Shiloh. In 1863, Ulysses captured Vicksburg, the capital of the Confederacy, and won the Battle of Chattanooga. He was then appointed lieutenant general, given command of all Union armies, and also fought in major battles in Virginia at the time. Another important military leader was Jefferson Davis. On November 6, 1861, Jefferson Davis was elected as President of the Confederate States of America. He ran and was elected for a 6-year term. Davis had already been serving as the temporary president for almost a year. Some other important military figures were General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, General P.G.T. Beauregard, General B. McClellan, General John Pope, and David G. Farragut. Now I'll be talking to you about the slavery during the Civil War. During the Civil War, many fugitive slaves tried to enlist in the Union's army, but they were either returned to their owners or turned away from the army. Free blacks also tried to enlist in the Union's army. This attempt was dismissed because Lincoln was attempting to convince the South that he was attempting to save the Union and not slavery to gain support. The Civil War affected African Americans and women more than any war in U.S. history. Many women directly contributed to the war as nurses, spies, government employees, or factory workers. Now for some inside information on the Gettysburg Address. On November 19, 1863, at the dedication of the National Cemetery at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on the site of the Battle of Gettysburg, President Abraham Lincoln delivered one of the world's most famous speeches. The main address at the dedication ceremony was 2 hours long. Lincoln reiterated the principles of human equality as stated in the Declaration of Independence. He also redefined the Civil War as a presentation of human independence. Now information about the Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln gave the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, on the site of the nation's third battle of the Civil War. He stated that all persons held as slaves in the rebellious states are and henceforward shall be freed. From the start of the Civil War, slaves attempted to keep their rights, and the Emancipation Proclamation secured it. Since it was issued under the President's war powers, it excluded all areas in rebellion, which applied to more than 3 million of the 4 million slaves in the United States. It was based on the President's constitutional powers as Commander-in-Chief. Around 20 to 50,000 slaves where there was no rebellion were freed, but many slave owners did not inform their slaves of their newly earned freedom. Now a trip down KKK Street. On a May evening in 1866, while 6 ex-Confederate soldiers were in a law office, one of them, John Lester, said, "Boys, let us get up a club or society." And the KKK was born. The KKK terrorized blacks and black supporters. They pretended to be ghosts and haunted these people. They shot, beat, and hung black people or black supporters. For example, they would attack white teachers that taught black people. They would also attack Republicans, preachers, and more. In fact, the KKK was so widespread that nobody believed the victims' tales in court. We'd like to thank some of the sources we used, including the Emancipation Proclamation from www.archives.gov, a book called Slavery in America by Dorothy Schneider and Carl J. Schneider, written in 2007. Also, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, a book by Jennifer Armstrong in 2003. Another website we used was information from ic.galegroup.com and Robert E. Lee from civilwar.org, and our final source was Abraham Lincoln from biography.com. Thank you. Today we talked about the Civil War. This is Nikhil Lyles from the Carpetbagger Scalawags signing off.